Christoher Bell dominated the show late in the race out in Phoenix, drove to his first win of the year, his 7th in his career. And Alexis, when it was all over, it was kind of a no-doubter for him.
Yeah, it wasn't a complete domination by Christoher Bell, but I would say it was a complete domination by Toyota, which is something we have yet to see this season. So that was a little bit different. But you could tell, even as he got stuck in the back, he had a bad pit stop, and then the sequences got flipped. And I think that last round of pit stops, he came out like 22nd and drove all the way to the lead. You could tell he was the class of the field. He was the best car out there. And he took it to victory lane.
C-Bell said it's great to get off to a nice start this year.
The last couple of years, we made it to the Final Four, which is great and amazing, but I felt like we left a lot to be desired on the table throughout the regular season. And, even the playoffs, we would have, a couple of bad races, and we need to clean that up.
So, Brad Gillie, the Chevy streak is over. Toyota can start a new one. Thoughts about what C-Bell was able to do late in that show?
I think it was pretty incredible. And considering he wasn't even the dominant Toyota of the race, I mean, you look at Denny Hamlin, you look at Ty Gibbs, you look at Martin Truex Jr., they all led more laps than Christoher Bell, but they had it when it counted, including leading the final 41 laps of this race. I thought it was great, too, because if you go back to the end of the season, 2023, they had that postseason test at Phoenix Raceway, and everyone walked away from there talking about, oh, Christoher Bell is just the class of the field. I wondered, okay, was that real or was that something that just happened in a test session? Well, they proved it was real yesterday.
So Christoher Bell gets the win. Brad mentioned all three of his Joe Gibbs teammates. The coach is pretty happy, too.
Feels absolutely great. For this reason, we've kind of been off here. We put a lot of effort into this weekend, and I was really pleased that all of our cars were pretty strong.
Ty Gibbs, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin all looked really well. And, of course, it was C-Bell at the point at the end of the day. Kyle Petty, it's kind of hard to picture now that when Joe Gibbs first got into this, people were going, what the heck is the Washington then Redskins football coach doing here?
Yeah, listen, we don't even remember that.
No, we don't.
It's like, but it's like when Hendrick got into it and everybody said, a car dealer and racing? He should stick to selling cars, not racing cars. So it's the same kind of thing. But I look at this and, yesterday, I don't know what it does to me. It makes me think in a lot of different directions. And I say this because you mentioned, and I take difference to the word you use, stuck in traffic. C-Bell was never stuck anywhere. C-Bell drove wherever he wanted to drive anytime. He was the only guy that I really saw that could drive wherever we want to. When we heard Brad mention his two teammates, Truex and Hamlin, they could lead, but once they got in traffic, they weren't what C-Bell was. They just weren't in traffic what C-Bell was. But the other couple of things is, anytime, and we all know it in this room, and we see it on a weekly basis, anytime seems to be a rule change, one manufacturer picks up the mantle faster than everybody else. And these guys seem to have picked up this short track package a little bit faster. And, Brad mentioned the test out there, C-Bell test, he wins. Christopher Buescher test out there, he runs second. Eric Jones test out there, best qualifying effort, drives to the front, passes, leads the race. So we can talk simulation all you want to, but let me tell you something. Testing and seat of pants and being in a car on a racetrack still pays off dividends when you go back to a racetrack.
We're going to spend some time talking about NASCAR's latest short track package and did it hit the mark? Is there still a lot of work left to be done? Alexis, I realize our sample size is still small. We're just 4 races in. Has the season developed a narrative yet? Is there a commonality from Daytona to Atlanta to Vegas to Phoenix yet?
That's a really hard question to answer. Just because there's not a lot of data points yet, right. And you mentioned that. But I will say the one thing that I've noticed and, has been pointed out from others as well is that the cars that were strong at the end of the year last year are strong again in 2024. You have, out of the 4 winners, 3 of them, almost all 4 of them, were in the Final Four last year at Phoenix. You have Christoher Bell, who won this past race, who was in the Final Four. You have Kyle Larson, who has won at Las Vegas. He was in the Final Four. And then William Byron won the Daytona 500. If it wasn't for, the thickness of a credit card, Ryan Blaney would have also been a winner. So I think, to me, that is the biggest thread that I see so far in the limited data that we have, is that the cars that were strong at the end of last year running for a championship are still strong again in 2024.
Brad Gillie, have you picked up on a theme this year?
I think Alexis actually makes a great point, and that's actually one that I had not considered, that 3 of the 4 championship drivers actually have won races this year. I don't know that there's necessarily a theme yet. I think in some of the first races we saw, maybe it wasn't one of the fastest cars that went into victory lane. But I think now as we start to move on, we're starting to settle in. We talked a lot at the beginning of the season that, hey, we've got Daytona and Atlanta Motor Speedway. Those 2 tracks are more anomalies when it comes to the way we race. Once we went to Las Vegas, we were going to get more into the regular season. When we come to Phoenix Raceway this past weekend, now I start to wonder if we're going to start to see a little more things pick up with the new bodies, with the Toyota Camry XSE and the Ford Dark Horse Mustang. Maybe more of that story is going to be told this weekend in Bristol, next weekend at Circuit of the Americas, then Richmond, Martinsville as we move on down the road.
Kyle, when we first introduced this car, we had all kind of teams winning and a huge explosion of new winners and people that we didn't expect to win. I don't get that feeling this year. Where are you on that?
Yeah, I don't. I think the one, if we're going to stay on themes, I think the one theme that has stayed true to this car is, from the very, very beginning, is you're either on or you're off. And in the beginning, the smaller teams seemed to be on before the bigger teams were. And it's just a thin razor's edge that you work off of. We see the Penske cars be on at qualifying, but off during the race. We see the Hendrick cars be on at Atlanta in a way we haven't seen in a long time, and then they didn't even show up here. It seems like it's that balance, and I think that balance, it's shifted back to the larger teams like we knew it would eventually. So we're talking Penske, Roush, Gibbs, Hendrick, those guys. That's where it's at. But I think. I think it's tough for the small team. Although Carson Hocevar, I thought he'd run a great race, the first part of that race. When they gambled and left him out there, and that kind of took him out. But that's a team that you got to look at.
Every week he seems to draw attention to himself in a good way.
In a good way.
A guy that's drawn a lot of attention over the last couple of seasons, of course, is Ross Chastain. 7th in points right now, 6th at Phoenix. And Ross says, I just want to be loved.
I get out and I'll tell y'all what I feel. I'm human, so... yeah, I don't want people to not like me. It's not personal, it's just racing. And I love to talk about racing. I love to race. I really, really like to race, like in the true art of it. So that makes some other of my competitors mad. I don't mind it.
I'm glad he defined it in there, that we know now without any doubt that Ross Chastain is human.
Yes.
He said it himself.
Thank you.
He sure did.
By